We're so glad that you decided to tune into the Church Rehab podcast. This episode has been brought to you by Canady Enterprises. Don't forget to subscribe and follow the podcast so you can be notified each time a new episode drops. Enjoy the podcast with our host, Pastor Mechelle Canady of Embrace You Ministries. Hello and welcome to another episode of Church Rehab. I am Pastor and Master Life Coach Mechelle Canady, and I am super excited that we are here for another episode. So, if you have not caught the past episodes where I've had a couple of preacher kids on the show who shared their church experience, do so. Also, subscribe to the channel by subscribing to the channel. Whenever we upload a new podcast, you'll be notified. So on today, I have two other preacher kids, and I want to dive into succession because I don't think that's talked about a lot. And I like to talk about stuff that's not talked about. So I'm going to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves, tell you all who they are, and then we'll go forth. Glenn, would you start with introducing yourself?
Hey, good evening, everyone. I'm now Pastor Glenn Foreman Jr. Of the Zion Hope Missionary Baptist Church, born and raised Jacksonville, Florida, and has been a PK all my life. That's all I know is being a PK kid.
Awesome. Leofric, would you also introduce yourself?
Most definitely. Evening, everybody. I am Leofric Thomas Jr. and I am just like Brother Glenn. I've been a PK all my life. Is all I know. um, I'm looking forward to the discussion. So I'm ready for it.
So one of the things I kind of chuckled at when I was sending you two out correspondence is when talking about successions, I noticed that you both are juniors, which carries a weight in itself. Both of your fathers have been milestones in the community, in the city, uh, and we're gonna talk about that. So, Glenn, what was it like growing up
Hmm.
as your father's namesake?
That carried a lot of pressure, a lot of weight. I grew up in the Mount Lebanon Missionary Baptist Church. At the time, my father was just an associate, but still, you were a preacher's kid. At the end of the day, there were things and expectations that you unknowingly had on you. So, instead of being out in the streets, you had to go to revivals. Instead of hanging out, you was at Bible study, cleaning up the church. And when my dad, God called my dad to plant a church, that's when it really, the weight of ministry really fell on my shoulders then, because everybody had this vision of, oh, because your dad's a pastor, your dad's a preacher, you're going to be the same thing. And I'm like, man, I'm not even trying to live in Jacksonville. I'm trying to get up out of Jacksonville as quickly as I can. So having Junior behind my name definitely came with an expectation, a weight, and it's something that you didn't wake up for, but unfortunately, it's something that's laid on you.
Yes. What about you, Leah?
I since the age of 4, I can remember or hear people or older pastors saying that I'm gonna be just like my daddy, or I got this I got this mark on me. I don't know what this mark is. Hey, boy, you got the mark on you. What is this? So I'm looking at myself like, what is this mark I got on me that same mark as my daddy has? And I'm confused, not understanding. But I think, and even not too long ago, me and a few of my colleagues were talking about how they won't name their sons after them because of the pressure it may carry on them. But I think growing up from my father's first church in Virginia, in Petersburg, Virginia, and then coming back to Jacksonville with Emmanuel Missionary Baptist Church, and now on to Open Arms. I think that the name that he carries is kind of been one that he's tried to ease on me also. He's tried to ease that pressure. Even as I was a kid, he would let people know, hey, he's just a kid, you know. Let him be a kid. Or growing up to that, he's gonna preach like you. Well, let's see if he'll preach like me. We don't necessarily know if that's the case. So if there's one thing that I have to credit him for is making sure that if there was any type of pressure, he would ease it, because he didn't want me to be tricked into thinking that I had to be just like him because I had the same name. So I have to give him some thanks for that, because I didn't feel the pressure like most pastors' sons may have felt, especially if you carrying the same name.
Mm.
That's good because like I know for me, like that's one of the things like my dad did for me. Um he allowed me to just be.
Mhm.
My mama, she put a whole lot of expectations like on who she wanted us to be in ministry. But my dad gave me the freedom to just be, and I really appreciate that now more than ever. So I get it. So Glenn, when it comes to you, and were you also told you got that thing on you your daddy got?
Well, for me, it was different because my father wasn't pastoring, even though my father was around a lot of the known preachers at the time in the city. I just kind of stayed out the way. I was, it was. I didn't receive pressure from outside people. If anything, it was pressure inside the church. It was, hey, you Reverend Foreman's son. You supposed to be at the church. You supposed to do this. You supposed to do that. But like Leofric, my father allowed me to just grow up. I grew up. We had our talks. We had, our fun. See, my father didn't pastor until I was 23. He
Okay.
didn't pastor his first church he planted until I was 23. So for me, I had the ability to be away from ministry. It wasn't until he began to pastor and I just was assisting him. And the more I assisted, the more it felt like the pressure of making sure, hey, I'm here. He like, hey man, I need you here. I need you here. And that's when the pressure of being a pastor's son really was laid on me. But leading up to leading up through high school and even college, it was more the people inside the church. It was you're the pastor's son. I mean, you're a preacher's kid. You go to school and people know you're a preacher's kid. And I think some pressure that may have come from is just people have this expectation about being a preacher's kid. You're supposed to be this holy roller. You're supposed to be this saved guy. You're not supposed to, do all these type of things. And truthfully, the church made sin. They made everything you was doing going to hell. So I used
Yeah.
to have this mindset of, man, I might as well just sit in church and die in church, and I get to heaven because
Mhm.
ain't no sense to me going outside of the church because you like girls, you're having sex, you're doing this, you're doing that. So yeah, any of the pressure that I received at first literally came from members of the church, and
Mhm.
that's where I began to just kind of not like the church because I just felt like, man, a lot of times they weren't authentic about themselves. They had this expectation because you were a preacher's son, but
Yes.
they themselves, their kids was able to do whatever they want to do.
That's
And,
good.
and that's when it just came to a point. You can have ministry. I don't want nothing to do with ministry, man. I'll be saved and just going about my business. So yeah.
Go ahead, Leah, for chime in.
So I mean, I totally agree. But I think, and I say it's a good we have some difference here because um growing up in it was so different because I mean, I used to get crazy stuff growing up. I mean, you was stealing money out the offering plate. When you come to school, you got on a new shirt. Oh, they tied good yesterday, huh? So you get all
Yeah.
this crazy stuff as a PK, and you it's so weird. Your friends is different. Yeah. But see me, I loved, and I have to really credit and I think I did another interview years ago, talk with some other PKs when we were talking about the influence of church members, and I always have to credit our church members because I would be that kid on Wednesday night and Bible studies, and we finish Bible study, and we out in the parking lot right as soon as it's over, and we playing football like it, and nobody would say, "Oh, that's Bishop Thomas' son." It would literally be people on the outside of church, like so, like how Brother Glenn is talking about the inside. My external forces on the outside, they were trying to get me saying, "Hey, you ain't supposed to be doing this," and I was so busy trying to prove to them that I wasn't going to be and that's what I was so wrapped up in as a kid. I mean, I was the class clown all the way through school because I had to let them know that I'm not my dad.
Right,
That's what
right, right, right.
like, I'm not him. I'm gonna be me. But to my world, to the church, to the people I knew, to the world I knew as far as church goes, they knew that that's LJ. LJ is LJ. That's who I always be to them, even to this day. I know we had a church member come back after not being in service for a while due to COVID, and she says, "Do I call you Leofric or do I say LJ? It's been so long." I said, "What you done called me my whole life? It's been LJ. So you ain't nothing changed. I'm the same me." And I've always appreciated our church, I mean all of our churches membership for treating me that way. It's just been the outside, that noise that you hear. I played sports all through my life, and literally you would that's what you would get. I would get ragged on just because I was the pastor's kid. I may say a slip up and say a cuss word on the football field. Ooh, the preacher boy cuss. You better go repent. Like what? Like, come
Yeah,
on, man.
yeah,
Let me take your iPod. What you listening to? That ain't Kirk Franklin. Like, oh, okay. All
yeah,
right.
yeah. It's funny because how opposite it is. Because I even remember going off to college, and I came back and I had a head full of hair, and people was like, "Oh, he done went left." He like what? Like, what are you talking about, man? Like, because I had my hair braided, so it's just crazy that external, that's where all my friends were.
Mhm.
And but internally, my mother would never let me go hang out with outside. My mother question would be, and parents would be like, "They go to church? Who is they? You
Yeah,
know?
Who they
Oh,
pastor?
they go to
yeah,
church. You could go with them. They don't go to church. No, you can't go with them. So
yeah,
just
yeah.
but
Mhm.
Yeah.
in the church is where we were doing the most trouble anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yes. First question be like, who they pastor?
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And I know even growing up, I was just sharing with some people just today the pressures of as the preacher kid always having to show up. I remember as a child I suffered from childhood migraines. If you've ever had a migraine before, like, you get it. But for people who've never experienced the nausea, the sensitivity to sound, the sensitivity to light, like, you really don't get it. So my mama never really understood about me having migraines. I remember one Tuesday, because we had prayer meeting back there on Tuesday, prayer meeting and Bible study
Yeah. Yeah.
on a Tuesday. And
Yeah.
I'm in there, I'm crying. I'm like, Mama, my head hurts so bad. And I was like, oh my God, can I just stay home? She told me, no, get dressed, because the best place to die is in the house of the Lord.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So somebody who's sensitive to sound and light, you taking them to church.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
I never recall being not. You always had to go to church on Sunday. You, I remember growing up, I don't know if you know, they used to have hoop it up and all these different type of activities on Sunday. My dad be like, "You can play on Saturday, you
yeah,
ain't playing on Sunday." Be like, "Bruh, the tournament is on Sunday." Well, you ain't gonna make that. It's like,
yeah,
what, like what am I supposed to do, man? And it was like you were going to hell if you didn't go to Bible study. You were going to hell if you didn't go to church. And I know when I got to my teenage years, I just really went to church because that's where all my friends were. But I wasn't there to learn nothing. Didn't care about learning nothing. It was just like, man, if that's gonna make y'all happy, then I would just go. But yeah, you was going to church. It didn't matter. You was going.
Nah, regardless.
yeah. I mean, we made we I can honestly I think and it's funny, I'm gonna have to get my childhood friends to watch this who I clicked up with in church because I think we had to make church fun our way,
Yeah.
Hmm.
so to speak. It was a lot that we were able to influence, and my father growing up, um, he would try to be as hip as he could to relate to me. And he started this thing years ago. I know a few other churches were doing it, but Hip Hop Sunday, and on fifth Sundays you'll have your step teams. You had a DJ on the stage and all this stuff, and it was so big. Like, and so after that, we get the step teams and everything, and I got my little clique of fellas, and we just made it fun for us because we knew that's where we had to be all the time. So it's like, all right, some of my friends' moms on the dance ministry, some of my friends' moms is on the hospitality ministry, and they all there during certain days. So we just trying to get up there during certain days, outside of certain things. But the good thing about it was getting older. I was, like I said, involved in a lot of sports. So my father actually come to my practices before he would go to the church for a lot of things. I remember having games on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and Thursday nights would be Bible study for a while back then. And you'll see him pop in for a game for about 30 minutes and then he'll leave. And then
Hmm.
he'll shoot straight to Bible study right after that. Or I remember playing Pop Warner football. I had to play for North Jacks because practice was right across the street from the church. and and wasn't nobody driving further than that to go pick me up and bring me back to church. So it was certain things that was surrounded around ministry and church, and after a while, I mean, like I said, once your friends is all there, like I agree with Brother Glenn, like you that's where all your friends go. That's what you're doing. So you make it fun for you because you always there. So you make it fun for you. So I think I totally agree with that. And we got in our share of trouble, had our share of fun, but hey, but it's stories to tell. I can tell you
Yes.
that. It's stories to tell.
Somebody posted if the what did they say? They say if the church van could talk.
Oh yeah. Oh
That man got some stories on it.
yeah.
Oh.
I think one of the thing is the pressure taught us how to be slick.
Yeah,
Mm.
well, yeah, huh, huh, yeah. To,
You had
to,
to wait. You had to find a way to finesse it. You had to
yeah,
wait. Had to find a way to finesse being you almost all the time. It's tough. I don't think people would know the pressure of it until. And I tell people all the time, you don't know what being a PK is like until you're really in it. Like
Nope.
really.
Yeah.
And people have different stages. And I know you mentioned Bruce Allen and the Mercers, and we all have different stages of when we became PKs or how
Yes.
we went through it.
mm,
And it's you never know. It's a different scenario or different story for everybody. But
Yeah.
all of us can say, hey, it wasn't easy. Some might be easier than most. I don't think I had it rough as a PK,
yeah,
but you definitely had your moments. You had your moments.
I know for me, I didn't have it rough either. And I think like you all, like we made it fun. And then I also credit like some of the church workers for creating an atmosphere that made us want to come.
Mhm.
So they did things with us. Like Sister Mary on the Sunday, she'll take all us to her house, and baby, she could fry the best chicken legs and
Mhm.
cook the best collard greens.
Mhm.
So she would do stuff like that, or after church, she would take us to the land and stuff like that. We
Mhm.
went to all kind of plays and events. One of the ladies, y'all know Corliss, her auntie Tugger, who owned she was at Fred Cotton's, her and Sister Baker, they would get him to purchase like tickets for the whole youth department, and we'll go this place and go that place. So they made it fun for us, but I don't think that was my siblings' experience because all of them left the church.
Mhm.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
left the church, they came back in.
Yeah, it was the people in the church. I can name Deaconess Rosa Prince. She's gone to be with the Lord. She got me out of plenty of trouble. Deacon Arthur Johnson, a lady named Miss Nancy Evans. Another lady used to take us to the at the time the Jacksonville Suns games. You know, we used to have a different little young men's group. Now, you know, for you, Leofric, y'all started. You was in that atmosphere where church changed, and I was in the church where it was just the same old traditional showing up to church. You wasn't no dress down Sundays or no hip hop
Oh,
Sundays or
Yeah.
nothing like that. And I just knew church from that perspective. And it wasn't until really when I got to Cookman where I learned really what the different aspects of church was. But it was definitely the people in, I could say growing up, it wasn't, my father allowed, like I say, I played all type of sports and all different type of things. But for as in seeing and experiencing frustration and hurt and pain and just the heck with the church. It wasn't until, like I said, when he started pastoring, and now I'm a grown man with wife and kids, to where I started seeing the backdoor stuff. And I think my father protected me from that growing up. But then as you got older, unfortunately, that's when for me the what, screw this, y'all can have this pastoring, preaching, church, just let me show up and I'll go home. I don't want nothing to do with this. Yeah.
so Lee Alfred, was there ever a time that you didn't want anything to do with the church?
Well, first, I'm glad y'all had people looking out for y'all because it was people wanting to tell on me when I was growing up. I never forget one lady, she told on me. I ain't gonna say her name because she's still with us, and she told on me, and my mama slung me into the church bench. It was a bench outside. Walking out, she slung me into it, and she just went to work on me in front of everybody. And the lady sitting there looking at me, and she mouthed to me, "I'm sorry." And oh, to this day, she laughs about it to me. She said, "I remember that day, and every day, every time she say something, I look at her face like, boy, if you wasn't my elder, and I wasn't a man, listen, we would have had us some fun." But
Hey, but real quick, how many whippings did you get in church? Did
uh,
you did your parents whoop you like in the church in front of people? Like I used, now that's the one thing I hated. My dad would come out of the pulpit and get me like, bro, like really?
now it's only been one time I got in trouble in church. I never really played in church. I ain't gonna like, 'cause I was always fearful of being called out. I was always fearing. There was only one time I got called out, and I'm blaming that on my cousin. We was sitting next to each other. He wanted to play and during Bible study, and my dad saw it and called us out, and we both got whoopings in the back though. It wasn't in the front, it was in the back, but never in front of everybody. I got whooped in front of in class though. Like I said, externally, in class though, in school. Oh yeah, I got told in front of class one time, but not in church for some odd reason. No, no. Mm-mm.
For me, I didn't get a lot of whoopings, and I think for me it was because I saw the way they beat my older siblings.
You was traumatized.
I was I was third party traumatized.
Mhm.
So I was like, yeah, y'all ain't gonna have to worry about me. Yeah, nah, I ain't, I'm gonna be good. Y'all ain't gonna have to worry about me. So I didn't get in a lot of trouble. But I remember the one whooping I did get, it was because now my dad, he was like this. If I wanted to go somewhere, he would go and he would get all my friends. He'll go pick them up. He'll take us, and then when it's over, he gonna be sitting outside. Glenn, I know you remember back in the day when we used to go to Skate City, and then they would call your name over the intercom. Like my daddy, if it let out at 11, my daddy was gonna be right there. But this one particular Saturday, he was like, "Don't go." And so I went to my cousin Sabrina house because I knew they was going every Saturday, and I got caught. Like the one time I got caught. Listen, my daddy beat me and cried. I'm like, you got to do one or the
You
other.
got to do one or the other.
Yeah, so yeah, that was the one time. Now, my children are preachers' kids. And yeah, they daddy would beat them in church. I would too. My son AJ, like I would pre-beat him. I'm gonna beat you before we get to church. That way I'll be able to to not have to take
He
you
know
out.
better already.
I won't have to take you outside.
He know better already. That's that don't touch nothing before we go in the store beat.
Yes, that was it. Now my daughter Victoria, I remember this one particular Sunday. And then we were members of Maddox, and he was sitting on the pulpit, and she was back there just to playing. He don't walk out the pulpit, don't walk all the way to the sidewalk. Now, when you see somebody walk out the pulpit, your eyes automatically connect. And you what man, he grabbed her. He was taking her out, and the church had the two doors with the handle that swing out. Baby grabbed them handles. It's him shaking the door. I was
Mm.
I'm like, oh my God. And then once he got her out, you could hear her all the way in the church hollering. So
See, that type of stuff made people not want to come back to church. That type of stuff. It's trauma when you walk through them doors.
Yeah.
listen, every
Trauma when you
time
walk
you
through
see them doors, you think about that
them doors.
woman.
Yeah, yeah.
So let me ask y'all this. What was the greatest pain that you watched your father endure?
Wow, wow, wow.
uh, I guess for me is that when my dad uh, and my mom planted the church, I actually was not living in Jacksonville. I was living in Daytona, headed to Orlando, and we started in our home, started in the house, and I would come home and it would be people everywhere. And it wasn't until we moved into our last location where it just seemed like everything just turned. Um, people who my parents was giving they were paying mortgages and getting their sons out of prison and paying for AC units and all type of things that they were doing for them, that all of a sudden these people just turned on them. And the first time I didn't see it, but the first time I knew my father cried, that broke me.
Mm.
That was a pain to this day. That even at his service, even when he passed, I was like, my mom was like, well, you didn't invite such and such. You didn't tell such and such. Like, I don't want such and such here. I don't want such and such to say something. Like, these dudes can't even look my way.
Mm,
So that is a pain that I actually carried for a while and actually kept me from even wanting to preach our pastor. So even now being at Zion Hope, I kind of made it my business to say, hey, listen, I was very direct on, how I handle business and how I handle things. But that is definitely something I will always remember, that the man who I consider Superman, the first time I knew that he cried and was broken by what the people did to him at the church. Yeah.
mm, that's good. What about you, Lee Alfred?
Um, I'm probably, and I'm too young to remember. I was at the time I was too young to remember. My father being voted out of Emmanuel Missionary Baptist Church. I was 6 at the time, and I vaguely remember a few things. Um, do I think that was his greatest pain? I'm going to say no, um, because a lot of people, if they watch this, they probably already saying, "Hey, yeah, him being voted out of Emmanuel was probably the biggest one." I'm going to say no. Yeah, it was big, but because of that, we birthed out of that was open arms, and I don't think that that was something that he is pained over anymore. Maybe in the moment, but not at that time. And but I will say I'm gonna go differently here. I'm going to say that I believe his biggest pain was is his great grandfather, who was also a pastor, who was his
Mhm.
role model, not having the ability to hear him preach. Um, I think he thinks about it often, and he says it often in our talks. So it's kind of like one of those things that it never happens and it haunts you almost.
Yeah,
And I think that's one of those things because me and him are kind of like how he and his grandfather was preacher's house, in his grandfather's house, and they were really tight. And I know for me, it's a few things in my head. I'm like, if I don't get to do this before my old man goes, it's gonna haunt me for a little bit. And I think that's some things where he may sit on a Sunday and say, "Dang, this was a heck of a service," but only if
Yeah.
he got to hear it. So I think that's one thing I think that gets him, that may get him from time to time. And I think we sit here and talk about PKs, but it's some things that I think pastors have a unique ability to do. And
yeah,
I can honestly say that I don't think I've ever seen my father cry. And I think because it's almost like you see so much and you endure so much, and it's like it's like, man, I just want to see you cry. I just want drop one tear. but but you have to be so strong and bearing everybody else's pain and bearing everybody else's prayers and their sicknesses and stuff like that. And I'm like, man, when do you get to be you? So I think like Glenn said, I think sometimes you just have to, you don't see it for yourself, but you can know. If you had to imagine the moment, you had to imagine that they cry.
yeah,
To think about that, because you're probably never going to see it at that moment. You just probably.
And I think what made my father cry was it's still so real today. It was a business meeting, and my sister, who is his world, just let the people have it in business meeting. Like, man, my sister, if you ever met my sister, you'll think, a lot of times people think we're twins, but man, my sister's very quiet. She don't really bother people. But man, that Friday, man, she stood up from the table, slammed the table, hit the table, and just went. And all my dad could do, he couldn't even stop her.
Mm,
He was nothing he could do. And I think for him seeing the emotion and the toll that it did to her that day, that's why I always believe that, man, that drove him. Like you say, never saw it in my face during that time. As he got sick, that's different, a different story. But I know that he went in his room and just cried out to the Lord on that particular night, because it just seemed like all hell broke loose, and it felt like we was on such a great growing plat. We were just on this growing. We were moving, and it just went left that night, and I just feel that that was a pain that he even died with. That
yeah.
he didn't he couldn't heal it. It couldn't be healed. So yeah.
yeah. I know your sister. We went to school together.
Mhm.
So she is a very quiet person. Like I couldn't even imagine her. Uh, so I'm taken. So I could only imagine because, like I said, we went to school together. Very quiet, very soft spoken,
Mhm.
very giving, very loving, very what can I do for you? I want you to feel like you're important, you to feel loved. That was her all the way through school. So I couldn't even imagine. So the break-in wasn't because of the people, it was because he felt like the people broke her. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, that's major.
Yeah.
So, this concludes our episode. We will be doing a continuation. So, if you enjoyed this episode, please come back. We air the first and the third Friday at 8 p.m. on all of your major podcast directories. I am Mechelle Canady with my guest, Leofric Thomas Jr. and Glenn Foreman Jr. And we'll see y'all again next week.